I'm Walter, 75 years old, married for 52 years, father of 3, grandfather of 7. I've often found myself awake at 3 a.m., unsure why. Initially, I saw it as a problem, insomnia, endless nights, and a mind racing with thoughts. But one day I changed my perspective. I began to wonder, perhaps God or my body is trying to tell me something. I stopped resisting and learned to embrace these moments as a natural part of aging. Now, between 3 and 5 a.m., I feel most alive. If you're like me or becoming like me, you might consider trying these approaches. Not to cure insomnia, but to make meaningful, gentle, and peaceful use of that time. First, don't turn on the light immediately. Just lie still for a while. When you first open your eyes at 3 a.m., resist the urge to turn on the light, check your phone, or get up. I used to do that and often felt more tired and stressed, as if I'd been yanked from peaceful sleep into nameless panic. Now I lie still, unmoving. Sometimes I hear the wind outside or the steady ticking of the clock. Nothing extraordinary, but in that quiet moment, I feel alive. As you age, you'll realize silence is no longer something to fear. It becomes a friend. Lying there in the dark, I let my mind drift like a river, without forcing it to think of anything specific. Sometimes I recall a morning drive to the market with my wife in 1972. Sometimes I think about my grandson preparing for college. Other times I simply think of nothing. I don't try to fall back asleep. I don't blame myself for waking up. I just rest in my wakefulness. Because my body, and perhaps my soul, needs such a space. Lie still for a while. You'll find some things only emerge in the dark when we're quiet enough to listen to ourselves. Instead of worrying, breathe deeply, very deeply. When I was younger, waking up in the middle of the night often led me to question, is something wrong? My mind would race, worrying about health, children, unfinished tasks, or unchangeable mistakes. A simple awakening turned into an internal storm, but then I learned a simple yet profound practice. Breathing, truly breathing, not just inhaling and exhaling automatically, but breathing consciously. I started practicing the 4-7-8 method. Inhale through the nose for 4 seconds, hold for 7 seconds, then slowly exhale through the mouth for 8 seconds. Repeat several times. Initially it felt odd, but with persistence I noticed my body responded. My heartbeat slowed and my mind calmed. At my age, I understand I can't control everything, but I can control my breath, and that's the key to nighttime peace. Instead of asking, why can't I sleep? I ask, what do I need right now? Often the answer is, I just need to breathe and let go. And you know, many nights I don't return to sleep, but I don't need to. Because after a few rounds of breathing, I'm in a different state, no longer fleeing, no longer anxious, but accepting. You'll find each deep breath is a message to yourself that you're still alive and you're doing just fine. Don't seek sleep again. Seek yourself. I used to spend hours after waking trying to fall back asleep, tossing and turning, counting sheep, changing positions, switching pillows. But the more I tried, the more alert my mind became. And then I got frustrated. Frustrated about insomnia. Frustrated about being tired the next day. Frustrated about not being able to control something as simple as sleep. Only later did I realize, trying to return to sleep when the mind is alert is sometimes just a way of avoiding something deeper, perhaps unspoken emotions, a memory needing recall, an unnamed fear. So I changed. Instead of trying to find sleep again, I sought myself. I sat up, put on a light sweater, quietly stepped into the living room, brewed a cup of herbal tea, mint, or chamomile. I lit a scented candle, its light just enough not to strain the eyes. Then I sat at the table, opened my notebook, and began to write. Not literature, not needing to be eloquent. I just wrote whatever came to mind. Today smells like an autumn morning from years ago. I miss my father. It's been nearly 40 years. I'm worried about my youngest granddaughter. She seems troubled. Some days I write a few lines. Some days, an entire page. Some days I finish writing and find tears streaming down my face, but I don't feel weak. I feel real. Sitting there in the quiet of the night, I'm no longer a 75-year-old insomniac. I'm Walter, a human being still living, still feeling, still with things to share. Sleep will return when it needs to, but the connection with oneself, if not grasped at that moment, might slip away. So if you wake up in the middle of the night, don't force yourself back to sleep. Gently return to yourself first. Choose a small habit, like reading a Bible passage or listening to jazz. I used to think that to stay healthy in old age, one had to exercise a lot, eat perfectly, and think positively all day. But no, at 75 I realize what keeps my soul at peace are small, regular, familiar habits, especially during quiet hours like 3-5 a.m. I have an old Bible, it's spine-worn, each page underlined with pencil from when my wife was still healthy. Some passages I've read hundreds of times, but each time I find something different, as if God's words always know what I need at that moment. And on some nights, I don't want to read. I just play a soft jazz tune I loved in my youth. Louis Armstrong, Ella Fitzgerald, or just a quiet saxophone in the night. I let the music flow through the space, through my chest, through memories. Someone once said, "Jazz is the music of pauses." And I think, perhaps that's why it suits the elderly, those with more pauses than words. You don't need much, just a small habit, a tiny ritual, so when you wake up in the middle of the night you don't feel lost. You have a place to return to, something to begin with. It could be reading a few lines, or playing a gentle tune, maybe sipping a cup of tea or just sitting by the window listening to the dew fall. When you consistently do something, even very small, your mind will remember, I'm not lost, I'm living consciously. And the miracle is, those small things, done regularly each early morning, become a peaceful harbor for the rest of your life. Write a letter, to someone or to yourself. I know nowadays people don't write letters much. Everything goes through phones, emails, texts, quick, concise, and easily forgotten. But I still keep the habit of writing letters by hand, especially in the early mornings when the world is still asleep. Not because I intend to send them, but because I need to connect with someone or with myself. Some days I write to my wife, the woman who's lain beside me for over half a century. Even though she's right there, I still feel the need to say thank you. Not grand words, just thank you for not leaving when I was stubborn. Thank you for still listening to my ramblings every morning. Once, I wrote to my youngest granddaughter, studying far from home just to share. When I was your age, I also wanted to drop out because I felt useless, but then I pushed through for another month, and something miraculous happened in that month. And some days I write to myself, to the young Walter, to the Walter of 20 to 20, to the Walter aging each day. I write to forgive, to say things I've never said, to record pains I've hidden, some letters I've never sent. But writing them by hand, on paper, with ink, has been enough to heal a part of me. I have a small old wooden box where I keep those letters. Whenever I feel weak, I open it to read again, and I see clearly. I've lived, loved, erred, and am still learning to be human, even now. Writing letters is how we, the elderly, remind ourselves our emotions still have a place to live. Even if no one reads them, even if no one replies, we've spoken, gently, sincerely, and fully. Stand up, move gently, even just for 5 minutes. At 75, getting out of bed isn't as easy as before. Knees creak, the back stiffens after a long night, and legs seem reluctant to cooperate. But I've learned something important. If you can still stand up, do so, even just for a few minutes. After waking, writing a few lines or sitting quietly for a while, I often stand up slowly, put on a warm coat, and begin gentle movements around the house. Not exercise per se, just shoulder rolls, side bends, leg stretches, and a few laps around the living room. I have a friend named Joe, 82, who still keeps the habit of walking 20 steps around the dining table each morning, then clapping 10 times before breakfast. Joe says, "If you can still move, you're still alive. If you can still walk, there's still hope." That saying reminds me, this body has carried me through so much. Work, love, raising children, attending funerals, celebrating birthdays. It deserves my care, not neglect. You don't need to go to the park or do yoga. Just a few gentle movements, a few slow steps, a few minutes of breathing amidst motion are enough to awaken both body and mind. Don't sit still in sadness or fatigue. Stand up, not to do anything grand, but just to tell your body, I'm still here, and I still care about you. Meditate, or simply sit in silence with yourself. I'm not a meditation master, nor do I strictly follow any religion. But over the years I've learned something very gentle. Meditation isn't a lofty technique. It's a way to sit quietly and truly be with yourself. Each morning after light movement, breakfast, or sometimes even before all that, I choose to sit quietly, doing nothing, thinking of nothing specific, not hoping to achieve a sense of tranquility. I just sit, close my eyes, feel the rhythm of my breath, listen to the wind outside the window, notice where my heart is. Some mornings, my mind still wanders, thinking about a phone call I haven't made, a past mistake, or simply the wind howling too loudly outside. But as long as I don't resist, everything slowly settles, like ripples on water. If you don't stir it more, it eventually becomes still. Sitting in the dark or under the morning light, I've learned something profound. You don't always need to have all the answers. Sometimes you just need silence and listening. To me, meditation doesn't mean reaching a perfect state. It means giving myself a space where I don't have to be anything. Not a father, not a grandfather, not a husband, not an old man. Just me, whole and quiet. We spend our lives talking, doing, chasing, but rarely just sitting still. And sometimes what we need most isn't something more, but something less, so we can see ourselves more clearly. Eat breakfast not just to be full, but to nourish. When I was younger, breakfast was rushed, a strong black coffee, maybe a sweet bun or a slice of buttered toast. Just something to get by, something to beat the clock, to fuel a day of doing. I lived that way for decades without a second thought. But now when I wake up at 4 a.m., breakfast is no longer just fuel. It's a ritual, a way to honor this body, my companion for 75 years. I don't eat much. A small bowl of oatmeal with a little honey, a soft boiled egg, a slice of dark bread with almond butter, sometimes a few slices of fresh fruit, some apple, maybe half a banana. I eat slowly with no TV, no phone, just me and the sound of a spoon gently tapping the bowl. I chew thoroughly. I savor the mild sweetness, the faint aroma, and the warm comfort of food passing through my throat. I often whisper in my mind, "Thank you, body. We've made it through another day." I don't eat just to be full. I eat to remind myself I am still worthy of care. Every breakfast is a way to say, I love this life, even if it's slow, even if I'm old, even if it's simple. Pray, not with ritual but with honesty. I was born and raised in a Protestant family, but to be honest, I wasn't always devoted to church. There were years I was busy working, raising kids, navigating life, too busy to sit and talk to God. But as I grow older, I've come to understand, prayer isn't about religious routine. It's a way of speaking to your heart. Now, When I wake at 3 or 4 a.m. after journaling or meditating a bit, I often whisper a quiet prayer. Not long, not flowery, just honest words. Thank you, God, for another morning. Help me be gentle enough to love one more day. If I meet someone sad today, help me to listen. I don't ask to live longer. I don't ask God to fix the past or hand me a lottery ticket. Those things don't matter anymore. What I ask for is peace, in each small thing, each meeting, each breath. To me, prayer is a silent but powerful act, as if handing over the weight of life to something bigger than myself. Then, walking on with a lighter heart. You don't need to be religious to pray, you just need to be honest with yourself. That already is a prayer. Reflect on your life with gratitude, not regret. Some mornings I sit quietly in an old cushioned chair, holding a warm mug of tea, gazing out to the backyard, where a wooden swing I once built for the kids still hangs. I don't think too hard. Just let the memories rise, beautiful, sad, bittersweet, tender. And I realize older people don't fear aging. They fear feeling like they didn't truly live. But I've learned, if you keep looking at the past with regret, you'll always feel like a bystander in your own life. So I choose to look back with gratitude. Even for the mistakes I made, the people I hurt, the chances I missed, I'm thankful I lived through it all with an honest heart. Each morning, I jot down a few lines in my notebook. Thank you for not quitting that job even when I was exhausted. Thank you for the friend who held my hand during my hardest time. Thank you for my wife still sleeping peacefully in the room beside me, who's walked this entire road with me. Each note of thanks is like a small stone building a path, and that path leads to peace. You can't change the past, but you can change how you face it, with gratitude, not bitterness, with warmth, not regret. Do something kind, even if no one sees. One odd thing about turning 70 or 75 is that you suddenly stop caring so much about what others think. The achievements, the status, the praise, all the things that once mattered, now feel like luxuries you no longer need. Instead, I find joy in small acts of kindness, even when no one sees, no one thanks me. One cold winter morning, after waking at 4 a.m. and making tea, I thought about the young cashier at the corner store, always smiling, though her eyes always looked a bit tired. So I wrote a small card that said, "You're doing just fine, don't forget, the world needs you." I tucked in a $5 bill and walked down to the store before sunrise. I left it by the door. No one knew who left it, but I knew. And that knowledge, that I'd sent a small ripple of kindness into the world, warmed me all day. Getting older can sometimes make you feel invisible to society, but you can still be a quiet, meaningful part of the world through silent acts of kindness. One day, I left a basket of fresh oranges at my elderly neighbor's door. Another time, I messaged my heartbroken granddaughter just to say I loved her. Once, I silently wiped down a park bench and sat there, waiting, in case someone needed a place to rest. You don't have to do something grand. One gentle act can be the light someone needs in a foggy morning, and in doing it, you light a bit of your own heart too. Remember, you are not alone, even when you're by yourself. Some mornings I wake at 3:12 a.m. The house is dark, quiet, no sounds but the faint whisper of wind through the window. My wife is still sleeping. The kids and grandkids are far away. I walk into the living room, sit in a chair, cradling a warm cup of tea, and sometimes a soft wave of loneliness creeps in. But then in that silence, I realize something. I'm not truly alone. I'm just by myself. And those are two very different things. Loneliness is feeling abandoned. Being by yourself, if you know how to listen, how to care for yourself, can actually be a form of freedom. I've come to see that there are millions of older folks around the world, also awake in the middle of the night, also listening to their breath, also remembering the ones they loved. In that moment, we are connected, not through words, but through silent presence. You are not alone. Every time you sit quietly, every time you write your heart out, every time you whisper a prayer or offer a kindness, you are tapping into the shared rhythm of millions of hearts that are aging but still full of love. If you're reading these words, whether at 3 a.m. or any time, I want you to remember, you are still alive, you are still breathing, and you still have time to love, to forgive, to be at peace. Waking up early is not a burden. It can be a small gift from life, for those quiet enough to receive it. I'm Walter, 75 years old, living in Oregon. I don't have much to teach you, but I do have one thing to share. You don't need to do anything extraordinary to deserve this life. Just live, gently, kindly, and present with yourself, each morning, each hour, each breath. And if you ever wake up at 3 a.m., think of me. Know that somewhere in this world, there's an old man also sitting quietly, holding a cup of tea, smiling because we're still here.